Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Friday Night Study and to our new series. I'm going to retitle it God's Calendar, just shorter, and it's less pretentious than the title I had. But before we begin, let's have a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we invite your presence here on this Sabbath. We know, Lord, that you have a blessing prepared for us. And even the blessings of this past week, the things that you have taught us, and the experiences that we have had, and the experiences of those around us. We see your Holy Spirit working upon hearts. We know sometimes we get discouraged because of the sin in this world, and especially amongst Christians. We see that your Spirit is being withdrawn, but we also see, Lord, that your Spirit is touching hearts and is beginning to be poured out upon this earth as well. And so we just ask, Lord, that your Spirit can be here as we read together, as we contemplate the clock that you have created in the heavens for us to behold, and that has guided us in our understanding of prophecy. And we just pray, Lord, that as we work through this book together, that you can help us sort out how to present this to others. We pray for one another. You can help us in our day-to-day walk with you. And so we ask that you can guide us now in our reading and discussion. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, happy Sabbath, everyone. And so I had written a paper called, what was it called? It's, A Chronological Analysis of the Prophecy of Revelation 9, quite a long time ago. And in that paper, I have a chapter called The Astronomical Basis of the Calendar. And so this is a rewriting of that book, but in a pretty drastic way. It's not just a revision. It's basically taking the whole idea of the book and putting it in a way that, well, there's two different ways that I'm going to end up writing this. So there's this edition, this first writing of it is going to be for, adults. I am working on an edition for children. Some people say that would be the one they would want to read, because I want to do one for homeschooled students. So it's like a course dealing with how the calendars work and stuff. So this is kind of in that vein, but not simple language. This is more the style, what I call Victorian English, like Ellen White writes. So a little bit more sophisticated, I guess. And you guys need to give me feedback on this. So I put here, I'm going to have poems of mine starting each of the chapters. And, I know some people don't like poetry, but I like poetry. That's why I write it. And this is a poem I wrote back, I think, in 2004. So it's 22 years old. So it's a long time ago. But this is kind of the theme that I have in this, as you see, as we go through it, dealing with wonder and being like a child in order to receive light and truth. So you'll see as we go through the book. So I'm going to explain a little bit about why I do things the way that I do in the book. So this poem, As a Child I Would Gaze. As a child I would gaze, behold the heavens in a blaze of light and truth, understood only by youth that God alone can guide the paths of wandering stars, while a fool laughs, imagining that this heavenly dance came of itself, and quite by chance. When men of faith beheld the stars, Mercury, Venus, and even Mars, they saw God's hand unfold his plan to guide the faltering steps of man. For the stars guide not our course, or mark our fate by unseen force. What gravity sets the world to spin cannot touch the world within. Look up now in the night, and behold with human sight the divine tapestry woven in heaven's loom for thee. Hear the music of the spheres, never heard by human ears. Take it in with all thy being, become again a child in seeing. Okay. So people can make comments, negative or positive, whatever they want to do. Now, this chapter here, chapter 1, is the one we're going to begin looking at, the architecture of time, and reading the original clock is the subtitle here. So I'm not quite sure about the format of some of this. Some of it I might change. But the section called The Eyes of a Child. Do you remember the first time you truly saw the night sky? I remember the clear summer night, with my dad pointing out Orion's belt and the Big Dipper. I remember the clear, cold winter sky, while visiting my grandparents' farm, away from the city lights, when the sky truly came alive. As a child, I experienced the wonder of beholding the vastness of space. The Milky Way held a million unknown secrets. What lay beyond? And where was God in all this vastness? The moon in its phases was a mystery to me as well. How did it stay in the sky? I have pondered and searched for the answers to these questions all of my life. Thanks, Jeff. When the ancients watched the sky and studied its mysteries, they saw much more than we do. While the heavens still inspired awe, they were also highly engineered. They were also a highly engineered practical reality. The sky was their calendar, a massive interlocking clockwork. The sun acted as the primary hand of this clock, establishing the fundamental rhythm of the day and dictating the cycle of the year. They watched the sun journey through the great circuit of the constellation, the Mazzaroth. When the sun entered Aries, they knew spring had arrived. Its precise position against the backdrop of the stars marked the solstices, the equinoxes, and the turning of the seasons. But the sun did not work alone. The moon acted as the intricate second gear, dividing the solar year into manageable, precise fractions. Its continuous cycle of phases, from the dark, hidden conjunction to its brilliant fullness, was the strict governor of the months. To the ancients, the moon was not just a nightlight. It was the exact, unyielding metronome that synchronized their planting, their harvests, and their holy festivals. Together, the sun and moon formed an inescapable grid of time. To the modern mind, the sky is silent. We have light polluted our cities and digitized our calendars until we are deaf to the music of the spheres. But to understand the prophetic timeline, which is God's schedule for history, we must relearn the language of his clock. We must stand where the ancients stood and ask the question they asked. How do we measure the passing of the divine? Okay, any thoughts on that? I know Jeff thought it's a good way to start.
Yeah, with a poem, kind of lightens up the.
You like the poem?
Yeah, well, it lightens up what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm trying to do is draw people in, a bit their imagination and just memories, if it can draw memories, their personal memories. And I'm trying to, go through this sort of like the wonder or the mystery of things. So you'll see how it goes, but that's all pretty understandable. How about the language in that? Is it too poetic?
Well, it's easy to understand. I mean, I understood it.
Okay, so, but yeah, it's a little bit flowery, but not too much, I think. Okay, so the ruler of the day, the sun. The sun dictates the rhythm of life. Its light greets us every morning. It is regular in its daily task, telling us when to awake and when to go to sleep. Its yearly task is just as certain. Springtime and harvest, summer and winter, all come at their regular times. It is how we measure the year. While we may take it for granted, we often do not fully understand its motions and how exactly they relate to how we presently measure time. While we grasp the obvious, the ancients understood its rhythms in ways few now do. The ancients noticed that the sun did not rise in the same place every day. In the summer, it rose high and north, making shadows short. In the winter, it stayed low and south, making shadows long. There are 2 points in the year that are of particular significance. These are the equinoxes. To determine the arrival of the equinox, the ancients did not need modern digitized clocks. They relied on the unyielding physical mechanics of the horizon. As the year progresses, the sunrise travels along the eastern horizon. In the winter solstice, the sun rises at its farthest southern point. At the summer solstice, it rises at its farthest northern point. Exactly halfway between these two extremes, the sun rises precisely due east and sets precisely due west. This true east-west alignment creates the equinox, from the Latin for equal night, marking the exact point where the daytime hours and the nighttime hours are in perfect balance. Now, that's not quite exactly true, but I didn't want to get technical about it. Ancient civilizations across the globe constructed massive stone monuments, completely independent of one another, designed to track this exact solar path. When the sun rose and perfectly bisected these eastern markers, they knew the astronomical new year had been crossed. However, when you track this cycle closely, the mechanical precision of the heavens reveals a fascinating engineered asymmetry. If you physically count the days between the two equinoxes, the two halves of the year are not mathematically equal. If you measure the span from the spring equinox to the autumnal equinox, it takes exactly 187 days. But if you measure the span from the autumnal equinox back to the spring equinox, it takes only 178 days. So Ryan says, wow. So you didn't know that, Ryan? Yeah. So we know that the number of days from the first day of the first month to the 10th day of the seventh month is 187 days. So one of the things I'm doing here in this book is I'm preparing them to understand some of the prophetic symbols, right? Now, also the interesting that it's 178 days. It's the same, because if you add 187 and 178, you get 365. Now, of course, there's a quarter day in there somewhere that adds up every 4 years that, you get an extra day. But generally, this is correct, okay? This 9-day discrepancy is not an error in the calendar. It is the physical law of orbital mechanics. The Earth's orbit around the sun is not a perfect circle. It is an ellipse. During the summer months, the Earth is physically farther away from the sun and travels more slowly along its orbital path. During the winter months, it is closer to the sun and travels faster. Of course, this only applies for us in the northern hemisphere, but the southern hemisphere, winter and summer are switched around. But the ancients meticulously tracked this 187 and 178 day division. It provided an observable physical constraint in the sky that could not be manipulated by kings or politicians, forming the absolute astronomical foundation upon which the biblical calendar was built. So I have this diagram here, and you can see it's got the autumnal equinox on the left, the vernal equinox on the right, and the summer solstice on the top, and the winter solstice. And then it shows where you have the actual center of the ellipse, though this isn't quite an ellipse. It's not proportional. And then you have the geometric sort of center of it, right, time-wise. And you can see that between the autumnal equinox and so I guess we would start here with, if we start with the vernal equinox, we'll start there on the right side. We go up to the summer solstice. It's 92.8 days. And then from the summer solstice to the autumnal equinox, it's 93.6. So if you add those together, you get 187.4, I believe, right? And then if you look at the other ones, it's just slightly less. It's 177.8, so is that diagram helpful or not? Would people be able to understand that without explanation of the diagram?
So the two dots in the middle, what is the two dots in the middle? One's the Earth and one's the sun?
No. The two dots in the middle are the actual center of the ellipse, right? And then the other one is I can't remember the name of it, but it's
The one to the left is the C one. C
yeah.
and
So
G.
that's the center. That's that center of that circle, right? But you can
Oh,
see it's
oh.
off center. It's off center because it's an ellipse, right?
I see. I got you.
Right. So with
But
an ellipse, you can see that it's going to have a farther path. You can see that the lines are longer. So that's like what we call I can't remember what they call that. But it's the,
starts with a P. Starts with a P or parallelium or I
yeah,
can't
maybe I
say.
should put some of the technical terms in there. I just can't remember what it's called. Yeah. But anyway, you can see that it's just it's a diagram to sort of show the mathematical proportions of the days, right?
Theodore, you
Yeah.
said that the 93.6 and the 92.8 that equaled up to 178.
187.4.
Well, I just calculated it up. It's at 186.4.
Oh, 186.4. Okay, yeah, you're right. That yeah, and the other one is 177.8 or 100 and what is the other one? Yeah, so it's actually slightly less than 100. So 186.4, and then the other one 88.9 plus 89.9. Right, so that's going to be 187.8. Yeah, so I did it backwards. I did 177.8. So it's 178.8 and 187.4.
Yes,
186.4, right?
That's
So if I
the,
add
that's the,
186.4 to that, you get 365.2, right? So almost.
the other one was 178.8.
Yeah, yeah. So we just generally say it's 187 and 178, but it's almost 179. But if you go on, so if you look at a calendar where it has the equinoxes, it depends on the year because we only count in whole days, right? When it comes to counting the equinoxes. So maybe I should have some explanation in that, just to clarify it. So if you count the spring equinox, which is normally on the 20th of March, and you're counting the actual days to the autumnal equinox, it is generally 187 days, right? And then you do the same thing with from the autumnal to the spring, and it's generally 178. But it can vary, right? Because they're not exact. So they're not exact fractions.
An example would likely be very helpful.
Yeah, so maybe I'll add something to it in that regard. Yeah, because I add the diagram to be helpful, but then somebody starts adding it up and looking at it and doesn't understand the diagram. It can actually make it more confusing. So either I eliminate the diagram and just leave those numbers, because part of what I'm trying to do with the numbers there is have the person be aware of that 187 days. Now that's an inclusive count as well, right? So, and the other one's not, right? Because if you had two inclusive counts, then you would have an extra day in there. So, but that's generally how it's explained.
That's the reason why you got it 186.4, right?
Yeah, because
of the conclusive.
Yeah, the 186 point. Yeah, the foci, the plural of focus. Around,
Okay.
yes, there. It's the foci. These are the foci. Okay. Now, so what I'm doing here in this chapter is more like an introduction about some of the things that we're going to look at as far as the orbital mechanics. So we're going to address each of these, like we're going to deal with the moon cycle in a lot more detail in later chapters as we deal with like the lunar calendar and then the solar lunar calendar deal. So I have different ways in which I'm going to try to put that together. So the constellations, or as the Jews called them, the Mazzaroth, right? There's another aspect of the sun's course, one largely lost to modern understanding, because it is hidden from our natural vision. During the day, the brightness of the sun hides the stars, making the sky appear empty. Yet, if that light were removed at noon, we would see the sun positioned directly in front of a specific group of stars. As the Earth completes its orbit, the sun follows a fixed path, through 12 primary constellations. So these happen throughout the seasons, right? The patriarchs and prophets knew this path as the Mazzaroth. Because these daytime stars were hidden, the ancients had to be careful students of the heavens by observing the last constellation to rise on the eastern horizon just before the dawn washed it out. They determined the sun's exact location. To say the sun is in Aries was not a mystic fable. It was identifying the precise physical coordinate of the sun against the starry backdrop, marking the spring equinox and the beginning of the biblical year, right? So when we were doing, that study dealing with the Revelation 12 sign in the book of Revelation, and we say that the sun was in September, the sun's in Virgo. That's because when the sun rises and sets, the constellation that is with it is the Virgo constellation. But of course, during the day, when you see the sun, you can't see the constellation, right? And obviously you can't see where the sun is at nighttime. You can just see where it is when it rises and sets. So you have to look at either the constellation just before it sets or the constellation just after it sets. And when it rises, the constellation just, am I doing that backwards? The constellation after it sets and the constellation before it rises. Yeah. Today, when men hear of the sun passing through these constellations, their minds often turn to the Zodiac and horoscopes. But this is a deception. Astrology is a counterfeit of God's original timekeeper. Heathen nations, particularly Babylon, took the mechanical precision of the heavens and mingled it with mysticism, seeking to turn the Creator's mathematical calendar into a system of divination. In its original design, this celestial circuit had nothing to do with predicting human destinies or worshiping the stars. It was pure astronomy, established by infinite wisdom. It stood as the great calendar of the harvest and the clock upon which the Creator scheduled his appointed times. The adversary did not create the constellations. He merely perverted the clock of heaven, leading the world to look to the stars for that which belongs only to God. So the purpose here is to, draw people's attention to God and to God's clock. Now, Angela has a verse from Job. And that's the thing is, I was wondering if I should add some more Bible verses to this document. So, and exactly where I'm going to add them is part of the...
That would help.
Yeah. So, but I haven't really decided where to add them. So this one that Angela's referring to in Job chapter 38, which are the verses there, Angela? Maybe look at the chat.
31 to 33.
Okay, 31 to 33, yeah. Canst thou bind the influences of Pleiades and loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or guide Arcturus with his sons? Now, I was thinking what I was going to do with that one is bring it in a bit later in the book, but because I do want to explain some of these, like what this is, right? Because when we read this in Job, it's going to call what we translate as Pleiades is a kemat in Hebrew, or kemats, or kumats, I guess. Kumats. It's got I don't see that vowel there. Kumats or kumats. No, it's kemat. Kema. That's the plural. right? But it's a constellation of 7 stars. And then the bands of Orion. Orion is Kisel, which means fat or silly or stupid. And then it has the Mazzaroth. So we know that that's the Hebrew Mazzarah it comes from, but it's just the plural. In the sense of distinction, some noted constellation only in the plural, perhaps collectively the Zodiac, it says in Strong's dictionary. And then Arcturus, which is Ash, or Ash. But and can you guess what Arcturus is? It's a constellation which we all should know. We call it
Great Bear.
the Great Bear or the Big Dipper. Ursa Major. Yeah. So
that's the Big Dipper, right?
Yeah. Ursa Major. There's Ursa Minor too, the Little Dipper. But okay, and knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set dominion thereof in earth? So, but anyway, this idea of 31 and 32, I'm going to have it somewhere in the book. But I was going to do a section more directly dealing with the constellations. So, right, because when I deal with Ezekiel, so I'm going to go through some of the stuff in Ezekiel as well. So this is more an introduction. So, but I have to kind of decide. Those are the hard things for me, like because I don't have all the book written, right? So when I edit it, then I move things around. Okay, thanks for that input. That's really good.
You might hate me for asking this, but why do they call it the Great Bear instead of the Big Dipper?
Because that's what they saw it as, a bear.
Okay. Okay.
we call it the Big Dipper. But,
the Big Dipper, more modern term for that?
No, it's just more an American term. Yeah, well, it's probably more modern.
It does look like a dipper. So
are you saying I should take the word wisdom and capitalize it, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this what the slaves were singing about when they were singing "Follow the Drinking Gourd"? I don't know if you've heard that song.
No, I have. No.
Where it'll lead us to freedom.
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I thought they were probably singing about the Big Dipper.
Okay, could be. I've just never heard of that story or song or anything. Okay, so the ruler of the night, the moon. Having established the sun as the primary hand of this celestial clock, we must now consider the lesser light. The moon was ordained to act as the secondary gear in the firmament, dividing the solar year into precise months. Its continuous cycle of phases, from the dark conjunction to the full moon, governs this measurement. To the ancients, the moon was the unyielding metronome. Now, I sort of used this paragraph already, right? So I don't know why I have the paragraph twice. I must have copied it. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to have to edit that, unyielding metronome, because I don't want to say the same thing twice, the same paragraph twice. Yet, as we study the sun and moon together, we find a deliberate mathematical friction designed by the Creator. The moon completes its cycle of phases in approximately 29.5 days. If we multiply this lunar month by 12, we arrive at a lunar year of 365 days. But the sun completes its circuit in just over 365 days, so it's 354 days, and the sun completes its circuit in just over 365. So there's 11-day difference, roughly. Here lies a calculated discrepancy of roughly 11 days between the lunar and solar cycles. This is not a flaw in the machinery of heaven. If the solar and lunar cycles divided perfectly into one another, the calendar would be simple, a simple static circle requiring no deep study. Instead, the Creator instituted a complex, overlapping system that demands constant vigilance and mathematical precision. It forces the student of prophecy to look deeper, searching for the underlying architectural framework that binds the sun and moon together into one perfect prophetic timeline. The sun provides the year, the season of the harvest, and the length of the day. But the solar year is far too vast a measurement to manage the rhythmic duties of daily life. We require a smaller unit, a minute hand for the year. Thus, the moon is brought into the great equation. Now, I probably should have that paragraph up at the beginning instead of there, right? So I've got to think about the order of these things, because there I'm it seems like it fits more into that paragraph, but that's what happens when you write.
What does it mean by the minute hand? What
Well, we're just thinking of the sky as a clock. So the
right?
sun is like the big hand, and the moon is like the minute hand, dividing the year. Right.
Okay.
So like we divide the day. I'm just using that analogy. Maybe it's not the best analogy. It could confuse people, but so those are the kind of inputs I need.
I wasn't confused. I just didn't know what you.
Oh, okay. Modern depictions often present a false mechanical paradigm, illustrating the moon circling the earth like a swift runner making endless rings around a stationary king. The visual illusion obscures the true relationship between the two. If we were to view the solar system from the heights of heaven, looking down upon the sun, the reality of their procession is vastly different. We would not see the moon looping backward and forward. Rather, we would behold two spheres, one great, one small, journeying together along the vast ecliptic highway. Think of it as an elder brother, the earth, and a younger brother, the moon, walking hand in hand down a long road toward a distant destination, the sun. They're not really going, they are falling towards the sun, but anyway, I'm not sure the best way to do that. Sometimes the younger brother advances slightly ahead, drawing the elder forward. Sometimes he falls slightly behind, checking the elder's pace. They weave gracefully back and forth, exchanging the lead, yet both are ever pressing forward. The younger brother never pauses to run circles around the elder. He merely shifts his position within their shared lane. So how is that illustration? Is there different ways that I could describe that? I'm going to describe it in more technical details later on, but I'm just trying to give the picture. Do people understand that paragraph? I'm going to take the sun out here. I'm going to put maybe around the sun. Oops. I'm going to get that in there. Around the sun. Do people understand that? The moon and the earth. That the moon doesn't go around the earth. Okay, good. Okay. Because they are bound together by the unyielding laws of gravitation, they actually revolve around a common center of mass. The fulcrum, known as the barycenter, does not reside at the very core of the Earth, but is situated some 1,000 miles beneath its crust, deep within the mantle. Consequently, the Earth itself wobbles upon its axis as it traverses its orbit, gently yielding to the gravitational pull of its companion. The month, therefore, is not merely the passage of a solitary rock about a planet. It is a gravitational heartbeat. The Earth and the Moon operate as a binary system, taking turns leading one another around the solar fire. This celestial march produces the cycle of the month. The term synodic, derived from the Greek for meeting, perfectly describes its function. It is the precise duration required for the moon to overtake the sun in the canopy of the heavens. Because the Earth is continually advancing along its solar orbit, the moon is compelled to travel an additional distance each month to keep pace with the sun's shifting position. The result is a cycle of approximately 29 and a half days. This became the unyielding rhythm of the times, the ancient measure of labor, and the faithful witness in the night sky, reflecting the glory of the sun to a darkened world. Okay, so, I'm obviously in the book, I'm going to go into more detail, precisely how, I'm going to address it here a little bit, sidereal time. That's so you can see some of these things are quite complex, and even in their simple explanation. So the witness of the stars. If the sun governs the year and the moon governs the month, then the stars are the silent, immovable witnesses. They constitute the distant, unalterable standard against which all celestial motion is measured, and they reveal a profound mechanical truth that the glare of the sun obscures. To comprehend this, we must consider the mechanics of rotation. Imagine a watchman standing in a great field beneath the night sky. At the center burns a great fire, representing the sun. Far off upon the horizon stands a solitary beacon, representing a distant star. As the watchman begins to walk a great circle around the fire, he also turns continually upon his own axis. So we have a thing called a star day, that is the sidereal day. He completes one exact rotation of 360 degrees when his eyes once again fall upon the distant beacon. So he's spinning around, right? This is a true mathematical rotation, completed in 23 hours and 56 minutes. So in order, as he goes around, as the Earth goes around the sun, right, there's 360 degrees. And if he's going to rotate in reference to the stars, a day is 23 hours and 56 minutes long, right? Yet a profound difficulty arises because the watchman has moved forward along his circular path while turning. The central fire is no longer directly before him. To face the fire once more, that is, to have the noon or whatever, the day, noon time, he must continue his rotation for an additional 4 minutes. This solar day demands a full 24 hours. And this introduces an astonishing reality, the lost rotation. Every day, the Earth must spin slightly more than 360 degrees to maintain its face toward the sun. By the time the Earth finishes one complete annual circuit, those accumulated fragments of rotation equal exactly one full additional turn. I think this is the thing that caused Stephen a little bit of duress in trying to understand this. Does anybody not understand it? Is there some other way I could explain it?
Yeah, it's a little hard for me to grasp because the Earth, I mean, there's a lot of Earth. Like what does it mean to face this? Like what part of the Earth is facing the sun constantly?
Well, at noon. So at noon, you're going to come to the same spot every day. So let's say, you're where you live, and noon, which is when the sun is in zenith. If you're going to measure that to the sun, there's 24 hours in a day, right?
Okay.
But if you were measuring that day based upon the stars, because you're going around the sun, every day, every sidereal day, that is the day in which you're looking at the same star. So if you measured it by stars, you would find that it's going to be 4 minutes every day short. So a sidereal day is 23 hours and 56 minutes. It's 4 minutes short. Now, if you add 4 minutes, so probably what I should do is show a little bit of the math maybe. But if you have 4 minutes times 360.
So if you're looking at a star,
yep.
You're standing in the same spot and the Earth rotates 24 hours.
If you're looking at the sun. If you're looking at a star, it's 23 hours and 56 minutes.
Okay.
All
right.
So it's 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes shorter. The sidereal, that is the star day, is 4 minutes shorter than the solar day. So if you take 360 times 4 minutes, 360 degrees times 4 minutes, you get 1,440 minutes, which is 1 day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the sidereal, if you count the number of sidereal days in a solar year, it's going to be 365 and a quarter, right? So they have their days measured by the sun, 365 and a quarter. Rotations measured by the stars is 366 and a quarter. Make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, I probably need a better way to explain it, right? One of the problems of writing is I always understand everything I write. So it's easy to assume the other people reading it understand it. Though I know I'm trying to explain this in a way that is simple, but sometimes it's not as simple as it could be. Yeah, so Kelly put the math 4 times 360 equals 1440. And so, we can see that gives us an extra day. So there's maybe a way that I could even illustrate that, some kind of diagram. I'm going to put the diagrams in here. But I haven't worked on the diagrams yet. I kind of wanted to go through this and see what people think would be helpful.
You got the 144,000 there too.
Yeah, the symbol, right, which is the number of minutes. That's the number of minutes in a day. So you can see in 360 degrees that, because as we go around, you get 4 minutes. And so we just use 360. It's the simplest way to do the math. And you can see it's 1 extra day. So why is this distinction vital to the watchmen on the walls of Zion? And what's Daniel 12:3 addressing?
That be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that do run into righteousness, the stars forever and ever.
Okay, yeah. So why is this distinction vital to the watchmen on the walls of Zion? The scriptures frequently employ a prophetic year of exactly 360 days, comprising 12 months of 30 days. The secular skeptic proudly points to this as a primitive error, arguing that the true solar year is 365 days. But the architecture of inspiration is not merely tracking the shadow of the sun, it is tracking the absolute geometry of the heavens. A perfect circle consists of 360 degrees. As the Earth advances approximately 1 degree per day, the 360-day year stands as the ideal, the integer logic of divine perfection. The 365-day year is the physical reality, the fractional consequence of our present groaning creation. Bible prophecy bridges this great divide. It speaks of the absolute language of the ideal 360, yet it fulfills its decrees within the constraints of the real 365. It is the high duty of the biblical calendar to reconcile the two, right? So you see the importance of that, of understanding why God has done the calendar, the sky, the way he has. That's part of what I want to show, is that and we know that when we do like a prophetic year, we don't count like a 360-day year. Some people try to do that to make prophecies fit, some kind of predetermined idea. But we know that a prophetic day equals a prophetic year, right? Or equals an actual year. And a prophetic year is 365. So that equals 360, pardon me. And that equals 360 years, right? So 360 days is 360 years. Hopefully that's clear. The marriage of the sun and moon. To comprehend the necessity of the biblical calendar, we might consider a simple allegory of 2 youths raised from infancy in profound isolation. The first is a young man raised to know only the light of the sun. He is bold and constant, yet he is terrified of the dark. He represents the strict solar calendar, rigid and defining the seasons, but entirely blind to the measures of the night. The second is a young woman raised to know only the light of the moon. She is gentle and attuned to the shadows, yet she is blinded by the glaring light of day. She represents the strict lunar calendar, fluctuating, reflective, and unbound by the solar year. Their separation renders them both incomplete. The youth supposes the world perishes when the sun sets, and the maiden supposes the waking world is but a dream. They remain ignorant of the true reality until they meet at twilight, the perfect momentary balance of day and night. This parable serves as a fitting illustration of the broken systems of modern timekeeping. The modern Western world resembles the youth of the day. We cling exclusively to the solar calendar, the Gregorian, and we know the exact progression of the seasons, but we have lost the appointed times of the moon. Other systems, such as the Islamic calendar, resemble the maiden of the night. They cling exclusively to the lunar cycle. They track the exact phases of the moon, but their year drifts aimlessly through the seasons, completely severing the time of harvest from the calendar date. God's system, the luni-solar calendar, is the perfect union of the two. It requires that the sun rule the day and the moon rule the night, not in isolation, but in divine harmony. The sun establishes the absolute boundaries of the year and the ripening of the harvest, while the moon dictates the precise days and the solemn assemblies. Without the sun, the harvest fails, and there's no provision. Without the moon, the appointed times are lost, and we are left as orphans in time, ignorant of our Father's schedule. Okay, any thoughts on that section? That's a little bit poetic. I stole the illustration from George MacDonald, a book called The Day Boy and the Night Girl, which I read a long time ago when I was a teenager. There was another illustration, which I'm not really sure how to do, which I've wanted some feedback. I didn't write anything on it, but has anybody ever considered the book, The Song of Solomon, that it is actually a description of the sun and the moon and the stars? Has anybody ever thought about that?
God's church. Yeah, I've heard of that.
That is the sun and moon and stars?
I've heard people mentioning that.
Yeah, because in the story, there's different ways to look at it. But one way to look at the Song of Solomon is that the beloved is the sun, and the Shulamite is actually the moon, and the maidens and the attendants are the stars. But I wasn't really sure how to use that as an illustration. It was just an insight I had when I was looking at this. And especially when I was thinking about the witness of the stars, right, going back to that, because there's a whole bunch of imagery in the Song of Solomon that actually indicates that that's what's being described. But I left it out just because I wasn't really sure how to use it.
The 365. Would that be like a literal 365?
There's 365 days in a year, yeah. In the solar year.
That's a little. So the 360 would be like a spiritual.
Well, it's an ideal. It's the idealized year, because there's 360 degrees in a circle. They don't put 365 degrees in a circle.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do for the reader is to set up some of these symbols for when we start dealing with the prophecies, because I'm going to be using different biblical prophecies and histories as examples. So, obviously I'm going to go through Ezekiel in detail, and I'm going to go through the flood in detail and look at the different calendars through time. So the idea of the book is it's going to be quite comprehensive. This is more an introductory chapter. So this is an interesting one. So the chariot of fire, the Zodiac subjugated. Nowhere is the conflict between the idolatry of the heathen and the sovereignty of the Creator more sharply defined than in the book of Ezekiel. When the prophet penned his record, he was a captive in Babylon, the very citadel of ancient astrology. The Babylonians erected great ziggurats to track the constellations, believing that the stars were the supreme dictators of human destiny. Yet Ezekiel maintained a strict allegiance to the divine timeline, deliberately rejecting the named months of his captors and recording his visions using the strict numbered months ordained at the Exodus. In his opening chapter, Ezekiel is given a vision that entirely overthrows the Babylonian system. He beholds a whirlwind, a great cloud, and 4 living creatures, each bearing 4 faces, a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle. To the modern mind, these appear as arbitrary symbols, but to the ancient Babylonians and the Jews in exile, their meaning was inescapable. These were the 4 fixed markers of the ancient celestial circuit: Leo, the summer solstice; Taurus, the spring equinox; Aquarius, the winter solstice; and Scorpio, the autumn equinox represented in its higher nature by the eagle. The heathen worshipped these points as the sovereign drivers of history. But in Ezekiel's vision, they are subjugated. They are not ruling the universe. They are merely bearing up a firmament above which sits the throne of the Almighty. The Creator is not destroying the celestial clock. He is putting it in its proper mechanical place. He demonstrates that the stars are not the rulers of fate, but merely the wheels of his chariot. This establishes the primary rule of biblical astronomy. The heavens are the dial, not the sovereign. A clock face tells a man the hour, but the clock does not govern the house. Astrology elevates the dial to the position of the master, fatalism, and modern secularism breaks the dial entirely, atheism. Prophecy, however, reads the dial to know exactly what the master is doing. The prophetic watchman looks to the sky not to seek his fortune, but to read the unyielding schedule upon the wrist of the Almighty. Okay. So the precision of the divine schedule.
I think that's really interesting. You illustrated that to a clock. That's awesome.
Okay. Hopefully it's helpful, but I have to think about how I'm going to rewrite some of this. But okay. The precision of the divine schedule. This absolute control over time is embedded in the very Ezekiel report. Okay. He does not use the mystical fluid timing of the astrologers, but the mathematical constraints of the biblical calendar. When he opens his book by declaring it was the 30th year, he is not offering a vague historical marker. This 30th year, which was the 5th year of Jehoiachin's captivity, aligns perfectly as the 30th year of the Jubilee cycle. And this is seen by his last dated vision, where he speaks of the 5 and 20th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, in the 10th day of the month, being Tishri 10, Ezekiel 40, verse 1. If the 30th year of the Jubilee cycle was the 5th year of the captivity, then the 25th year of the captivity is the 50th year of the Jubilee cycle, the year of the Jubilee. That is 30 plus 25 minus 5 equals 50. Now I'm going to go into Ezekiel in more detail in the book, but I'm just introducing Ezekiel here regarding the calendar and the preciseness of what's happening here. The exact dates of his vision, such as the 5th day of the 4th month, July 21st, 592 BC, are given for us to understand and are not mere trivialities. The movements of the heavens and the dates of the prophet are perfectly synchronized to the lines of prophecy, shattering the chaotic divination of Babylon and exposing the deceptions in the modern neglect of Bible prophecy. So you can see I'm kind of setting things up for later in the book. To conclude our understanding of this celestial machinery, we must look at the great astronomical sign of Revelation 12. A woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. Here we behold all the gears of the mechanism we have described. It harkens back to the 4th day of creation, where God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Genesis 1, verse 14 and 16. While the evangelical world has frequently misapplied these symbols through a futuristic interpretation, the physical mechanics of the heavens still bear a faithful witness. On September 23, 2017, a precise astronomical alignment occurred over Jerusalem. The sun passed through the constellation of Virgo, clothing her, while the moon rested at her feet. The 9 stars of Leo, joined by the 3 wandering planets, formed the crown, while the planet Jupiter completed a 9-month transit through the womb of the constellation. While men may falsely interpret the earthly event this sign was meant to herald, the mechanical alignment itself stands as a profound testament to the unalterable mathematics of the Creator. The sun, moon, and stars are exactly where they were ordained to be, functioning precisely as the great hands of God's prophetic clock. They do not cause the events on earth, but they infallibly strike the hour. In understanding these signs correctly, in the light of Bible prophecy, we must discern their true design. They are not given for predicting the future in the manner of worldly soothsayers, as many incorrectly conclude, nor are they provided that we might manipulate our destiny, as ancient Babylon and modern mysticism suggest. They are given that we might measure the time, obeying the counsel of God to watch and wait, discerning the signs of the times. We must neither presume to run ahead of his providence, and that should be capitalized. I don't know why I didn't. Nor linger in unbelief behind it. We must keep perfect step with God's clock, waiting in faith for the final hour. Okay, so I guess we did get through the chapter. Okay, any thoughts about this? So the idea that I have here is I want people to be, why is it doing that? I don't want to zoom in, I just want to scroll. So I'm trying to set them up with little bits and pieces at a time rather than dumping everything on them all at once. And so some of these things that I introduce, I'm going to be hearkening back to them as I move through the various chapters. So the idea that I'm going to deal with in chapter 2 is that I'm actually going to deal with, the idea I have is that I'm going to deal with the day. Like, when does the day start and end? So each of the chapters are really going to be answering a question that's posed at the beginning. So it's something that we run into where there are people who want to start the day at sunrise. We know that astronomers start the day at noon for obvious reasons, right? And then we have the Egyptians start the day at sunrise. The Romans and us, with our Roman calendars, we have the day start at midnight. And that was for reasons having to do with administration and so forth. But there's lots of things that we can learn about the day. And so we're going to, deal with how the day is divided, what a watch is, at the nighttime watches, deal with the hours. And then as we go through each of the things, we deal with the day, we deal with the moon, the month, how that works in more detail than what we had here, and examples, practical examples. Because in order for people to understand the prophecies, as we've been studying them, to understand when the year begins, why it begins on January 1st on the Gregorian calendar, why it begins in the spring, how those different calendars interact. So any feedback on this? So Brian said, I think it's very good. That doesn't help me. I mean, it's nice you say that, but is there things that we should do to improve the paper that you can think of? So it is accessible, right? That is, people can read this and understand it. They should be able to understand it, I think.
I found it to be very accessible.
Okay, so that's the important part. Now, there are some illustrations I could have, and so I'm going to take note of those. And I do think I need, so I have a poem at the beginning. I think I might end each of the chapters with either a paragraph from the Spirit of Prophecy or a Bible passage. So this might be a good place to put that Job quote. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. Also,
Yeah.
as when you that vision there of the four faces, the signs there that you're talking about aren't the same signs as they are according to the astrologers. I mean, they have Gemini for the summer solstice and so forth.
Yeah, you're talking about, yeah, we're using the biblical ones and the Babylonian ones. Those, yeah. Yeah, so do I need to make that clear at this point?
I think you should, because you're probably going to get barraged by a bunch of astrologers saying this guy's cuckoo. He doesn't even know.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried. So I should at least point out that we have different names for them now, is what you're saying. Like clearly mark what the Bible pictures are. Yeah. Well, I want to have actually a diagram of some sort. I'm not really sure how to do that though, but and I probably need like the passage from Ezekiel as well. So I need to inset some of these Bible verses. Right? Does that make sense?
Makes good sense to me.
Okay. Yeah. So like with this one here, if I put this, and I could put it in some kind of box or something.
31 to 33.
Oh, I need 33 in there? Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. And then I would put this, something like that. Just, I could put like the little fancy thing around or whatever. Show astrology. Yeah. Didn't I show astrology to be Satan's counterfeit, Kelly? I thought that was pretty clear.
Verse 31, that's Pleiades, that word, it's got 7 stars in it, right?
Yeah, Pleiades. Yeah.
Do you want a comma on canst?
What's that, Jan?
A comma, C-A-N, comma T, or S-T, can't?
No, because that's the King James Bible. That's how they spell it. It's Old English. So I'll keep it as the King James has it. Were you here the whole time, Jan?
No, I just came on because I just finished some stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, you can watch the video later on. People can watch it. But basically the idea is this is the introductory chapter to this book on understanding the time prophecies, how the calendars work, and how Bible prophecy works. But it's supposed to be done in an engaging, easy to understand manner, right? But that's not always that easy to do. Yeah. So, yeah, and Kelly had asked if I'd dealt with astrology, and I did. So that was in this Ezekiel dealing with him showing the contrast. Basically, the book of Ezekiel is tearing down the Babylonian astrological system, right? That's part of the purpose of it. The other thing is this, I'm still trying to consider how I'm going, because I do want to, but I haven't done enough study on it yet, on Song of Solomon. But as I've been reading through it, it's pretty clear the Song of Solomon is actually describing the sun and the moon and the stars as an illustration. So I'm not quite sure how to use that though, but it is interesting. Originally, I was going to use that in the part about the day boy and the night girl, which I used that illustration instead of the beloved and the Shulamite. So, okay. So any final thoughts before we close with prayer? I know some people will like the poems, some people won't, but I've always liked that poem. And I got quite a few other poems that deal with the planets and the stars and things like that as well. For some reason, I've written a lot of poems that deal with the sky. I have one that I'm going to use when it comes to this for the next one for the day, because that poem starts with how does it go? And that one, it's called The Final Chapter, and it starts with the early summer morning sun, and then it goes through, and it ends with I long to see the setting sun and hear the author's words well done. So that one I'll use for the second chapter dealing with the day, because I'm going to deal with the sunrise, sunset, and all that. Yep.
I have a question. Yep. So do you have the sun, moon, and stars as relating to astrological events of eclipses and stuff like that?
I'm not sure what you mean. Am I going to
Oh, I
deal
don't know.
with eclipses?
I haven't,
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
deal
wasn't,
with eclipses. Right. This is basically dealing with the calendar, but we will deal with solar and lunar eclipses as well
okay. So
later
I
on
just
in the
looked
book.
up on my little app that when it says sun, it's showing the sign in Luke. And then and I did signs with moon, and it just came up with one verse. So, with all of those, so that's why but it's not necessarily, it's just the words together. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, there's tons of verses in the Bible that deal with the sun and the moon and the stars and different types of events in the heavens. So the
Yeah,
main
I
thing,
understand. Thank you.
yeah, the main thing, like if you watch the video, is that I'm basically going through and showing that we have like the sun rules the day, the moon rules the night, and then we have the stars, and how those work together to produce our calendar. But that's just an introductory. So this one was an introductory chapter, introducing the different elements. But then as I go through it, I'm going to show how the sun determines the day, and then we'll deal with the month itself, how the moon works, and then how the sun and the moon work together for the year, and then the different types of calendars. We'll go through, the Islamic calendar, which is totally a lunar calendar. We'll go through the Babylonian calendar and how it differs from the biblical calendar. We'll look at the Egyptian calendar. We'll look at the Mayan calendar. And each of these calendars, they have lots of detail and interactions with them that are fascinating, right? Now, the main thing is it's a pretty dry topic if it's not presented properly. And I'm not sure that, I'm going to do a fantastic job at it, but I'm going to try to do my best to make it readable and accessible. And part of it is to make it, as we do these studies, going through it. And I figure it's going to take a long time to write the book. I figure it'll take a year of studies. So it's not like, I'm going to have a book ready in a month, because there's a lot of detail that needs to be addressed. And it has to be put in a way that not just that people are going to read it, but that God can speak to them and that they can see God's purposes as prophecy unfolds. So it's really meant to be an introduction to prophecy, to Bible prophecy, and all of the work that we've done with calendars in this movement. So how it's going to turn out, or how it's going to work. So far, I think, I've written 4 chapters, but the second, third, and fourth chapter I'm completely redoing because I was moving way too fast. As I started working through it and refining the first chapter, then I got more clearly which chapters I'm going to need how I'm going to put those chapters together. Writing a book is not the easiest thing to do. Having you guys help me definitely makes things easier. Okay. So thanks for that.
Do you have, you're going to have maybe one chapter for each calendar or something? And then maybe how those calendars relate to each other?
Yes. Yeah. And then I have to have illustrations of the use of those calendars as we've used them in our lines, right? So that people understand the lines better and why those calendars are a witness to Bible
Amen.
prophecy.
Yep.
And, one of the things that I've worked on quite a bit with AI is figuring out these different lines and the probabilities that they're simply, coincidences. And, I'm going to deal with the dates in the prophetic mirror, the 2520 prophetic mirror. I've already done a paper on that, but I'm going to introduce that as a chapter as well. For those that are familiar with the prophetic mirror probability, it's like, can't remember the probability. It's 6.9 times 10 to the power of 9 or something. So it's 690 billion to 1, maybe, odds that those prophetic are connected to the moon. So the thing is, it has to do with the start of the year. The start of the year for each of those years, like 742 BC, 677, 723, 457, 34 AD. Well, it's not really part of it, I guess. And then 538, 1798, 1844, and 1863. Those ones, the year begins really close to the spring equinox, within a day of the spring equinox, and the chances that happens in that precisely for all of those years in the prophetic mirror are 690 billion to 1 odds. So things like that, if people understand how the calendars work, how to determine the Jewish year, the start of the year, I'm going to go in that in detail, how the feasts work, how they're determined, and then use examples from the Bible where we see those things happening that often are missed. Like one of the ones we found when we were studying through 1 Samuel was when when Saul is seeking to kill David, and there's this feast that David misses. We determined that that's actually the feast at the start of the year, on the first day of the first month. And I don't know anybody else who noticed
Amen.
that. So, yep.
Sorry, I just said question. What AI version are you using?
I use different ones. The best one for mathematical probabilities seems to be the Microsoft Copilot. It seems to do the math really well, right? So, because it shows me all of the mathematical calculations step by step. Because, for probability, those are pretty tough things to do. And it helps me set the parameters, like in a really critical manner. So instead of just, me roughly saying, well, how do we define the probabilities of an event are kind of difficult. Sometimes some things are pretty straightforward, but some things there's little subtleties that, a skeptic could say, that's more likely, like, are those events independent and stuff like that. So that program kind of helps with the math. Because even though I like math, when it comes to probabilities, those are long calculations. So it's much easier having a computer do it for you. Let's filter that. Oh, somebody's phoning me. Okay, I don't need to answer that. Okay, I'll let him. That's Mark actually phoning me. I have a feeling he wanted to be at the study tonight, but he forgot. For those of you who know Mark Goen, my student. Okay, so thanks for that. So let's close with prayer. Okay. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for the study that we had this evening and for the Sabbath. And we just pray, Lord, that you can be with us throughout this day. We're thankful for the way that you have led us in our experience, of the things that you have revealed in your word. And we are thankful for your faithful witness of the sky in prophecy, that we can know the signs of the times and that we can see the time that we are living in. We pray that you can teach us how to watch and wait and not run ahead and not lag behind. I pray for each one, Lord, that you can bless them in their personal study and that this Sabbath will truly be a blessing to each one of us. We pray for the studies tomorrow, that you can lead and guide in those studies. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.